And I don't want to keep you longer than I have to. And the first thing that I'm going to do is to say to you that this chapter speaks about how you could analyze ethical dilemmas in a logical and systematic manner, and then how you can apply ethical decision-making framework to situations that require ethical judgment. Okay? And so there's always an ethical dilemma when there's conflict of interest. And by considering what one person might want as opposed to another, and how individuals are affected by decisions, is the scenario. Kendrick, I saw your hand.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask before we started recording, will we have to know the format of the various frameworks by head?
You mean the very approaches?
For instance, what they call it, the IAC, like the accounting framework.
Oh, no.
Talkers framework. I just wanted to know.
No. I'm more concerned with the fact that rather than section by section, just to know that there existed something that wanted to put this in context in terms of regulating accounting practices. So you don't have to know it verbatim. And most of the things that was put in place was as a result of issues that came up prior to those cases. So that answers your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Not a problem at all. And in the exam, as well as what you're working on now, which is case studies, in these scenarios, you're going to have to make a decision which agrees or disagree or says right or wrong against a ethical principle, and at the same time maximize the benefit or any harm that is done to an individual or an organization. So depending on the scenario, one of the things I want to stress, and I've been stressing it repeatedly, before you get to answering any questions asked, make sure you analyze what are the facts of the case. What are the facts? And in your conclusion, you can make any references to, well, if this had applied or that had not applied, then X, Y, Z, or whatever else. But you want to get full marks if you list the facts, highlight the facts, however you want to do it, and keep your answering of the question in relationship to the facts. There will be some questions on the exam that you'll have to analyze the case as presented. And based on the case as presented, there's usually a question at the end of the case study. What you think Tom should do if you were in this position or whatever have you. And rather than having a right or wrong answer per se, it is how you develop your case and the decisions and which approach you decide to take on that. So against that background, let's look at what we have today. And keep in mind that the consequences of any decisions that are made will often reflect on the perceived integrity of the individual who's making the decision, his employer, or any principles that might be involved. Okay? And there's often some degree of subjectivity in any answers in respect of ethical decisions. And once you're able to support your decision by some facts, but focusing on some specific facts, then it would be okay. It would be okay. And so I want you to always pay attention to the facts. You have to know the different approaches to ethics. A person who adopts a utilitarian approach to a problem will pursue the greater good of the greater number. And so that is always the utilitarian approach. Okay. And on the other hand, but that is different from a purist in that they will try to actually get, they will achieve a consensus. It may not be the greater good for the greater number, but if the majority says we're going our way, that's the way they're going to go. Not necessarily looking at what the consequences to them might be. And sometimes if you do not look at the consequences to the scenario, you could form a different opinion as to what might be the correct ethical position to take. And so once you understand what is the meaning of the different approaches, and you can explain from the approach that you've taken, why you've taken that, and what the outcome of that is, taking that approach, then you are, I would say, 75% on the way to getting that as a right answer to any questions asked. So ethical dilemmas from the perspective of a duty. Anytime you hear the word duty, you know that's deontological, because deon means duty. The teleological is what is the end result, what is the consequences, and people prefer to look at what is the outcome of the breach. Where there isn't an act involved, we look at the good to the community, the good to the greater number of whether or not an action is right or wrong. And when you talk about the absolutism, absolute, that comes from the word absolute. That means in every case, this is wrong. Death, a murder is one of those things that genuinely in every case is wrong, except in the time when war is actually declared, then it's all star, anything goes in that regard. So you have to always look at the facts, always know what the first principles are. Anything to do with virtue, is the virtue of an individual. The virtuous is the individual, where you're talking honesty, integrity, fair play, things that you would expect in basic human beings. Okay? And against that background, that is what you're going to look at. And looking at the personal qualities and characteristics of the person, how they display that behavior, that is what you would want to see happening at all times. So in some cases, or there might be a case where there is no ethical dilemma at all. And we sometimes confuse dilemma with what might be one way of resolving an issue, with a situation where there's only one way to move forward. And in some of the cases that we're going to be looking at, there might be not an ethical dilemma at all. And so we're going to see how you work that. So I'm going to use a breakout room. We're going to be looking at breakout room number 1. You're going to be looking at case number 1 on page 167. And you're going to be answering the question, you are not convinced that anything will be done without these problems. What should you do? That's what we're going to be looking for. I'm going to split you in 2 groups. Group number 2, you're going to be looking at case number 3 on page 171. And I want you to answer the question, how should you deal with this situation? And so you're going to read the case together, analyze the facts, come up with a conclusion, and then when we get back to the group, report back to the group. Since we have a small number tonight, only 4 persons here, I'll split it in 2, and I'll give you like about 15 minutes to discuss the case. Then we will come back together and discuss the case as a unit for another 10 minutes. And that should get us through this session in a very quick manner, but at the same time covering all the information that's in chapter 6. And then you could ask any questions as to your case studies and whatever else, because the case studies would be definitely due by next week, Thursday. If I could just check my calendar, yeah, the 3rd of March. I should have those in for us to discuss at the end. Give me one. Apologies. I'll prepare the breakout rooms now. So which group wants to go first? Group 1 or 3?
Group 2 could go first.
Okay, group 2.
So our question, you are a customer service assistant working at the counter of a bank. An angry customer comes to your counter position to make a number of complaints about administrative errors on his account. He is a high net worth customer with several account relationships with the bank. The customer is rude and abusive. Although you understand the customer's concerns, he continues to shout and swear about the terrible service. You offer to let him speak to the manager, but he does not wish to do so. He is only concerned about telling you about his problems with the bank as loudly and aggressively as possible. You are very intimidated by his manner. How should you deal with the situation?
So hold on. Now that you've read it, what are the facts?
The facts is that the customer is angry.
Mm-hmm.
He has a number of complaints about administrative errors on his account. He is a high net worth customer with several account relationships with the bank. He's rude and abusive. He shouts and swears about the terrible service.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't wish to speak to the manager. And he's only concerned about telling you about his problems with the bank as loud and aggressive as possible. And you're intimidated. So that's basically the whole thing.
Yeah, but it's different from setting out the facts as opposed to reading the paragraph.
Okay.
And that's what I really want to make sure. And you covered all of the facts, which is great.
Oh, okay. All right. So you just pick
The
out
answer is
pick out the main points.
pick out the main points of the facts. On your exam, you could actually list them, or you could take a highlighter pen and just highlight it. That's where I will know that you are picking out the main facts in any case.
Okay. Okay.
Highlighting saves time.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yes. Well, this is a common situation in the bank, Ms. Frazier.
Mm-hmm.
And to tell you the truth, it doesn't get as far as me listening to his abusive ways, because we have police officers, and normally they are
Police officers or security officers?
We have both.
Okay.
So as soon as the police officer hears loudness, they walk forward. So
Okay.
they walk to a particular area, because we have like a petition where the customer could lean on.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little what you call it, counter.
Yes.
Once they stand there, you give them eye contact, and your eyes meet. That means take them. So they remove the customer from the bank. So
Okay.
I'm not intimidated by customers personally. I just make that eye contact, and my officer will do the rest.
So in reference to intimidation,
Mm-hmm.
what is creating the intimidation?
I guess the rude and abusiveness of the customer, and
The rude and abusiveness of the customer.
the shouting,
Anything else?
the shouting, swearing.
Well, the rude and shouting and swearing, that's all in one.
Once you start with the shouting and the swearing, that's it. Well, we don't have we don't have no police to our entrance. We just have regular security.
Okay.
And normally if the customer starts to get irate or whatever the case may be, 9 out of 10 times first, I'll apologize and say, well, hold a second, let me get management to further assist you.
Okay.
If you start to swear, I say,
Uh-huh.
hold on, this about my pay grade now. And then
Okay,
I
let
say,
me
and
go
then I
back
call
to
the
Miko.
manager and tell them come.
Tamiko, let me go back just a little bit for a particular purpose. Remember, intimidation was one of the key components of conflict of interest.
Yes.
One of those 5 things that we talked about. And in that scenario, what could assist? I try to ask the question without giving the answer. What could assist? What could assist our situation to be an intimidating one? Anybody could jump in. It don't have to be just you two. We talk about advocacy, we talk about intimidating, and
It's the that would make sense. That one makes sense. No.
what was that?
Usually, a conflict of interest is usually determined when somebody feels as if they've been wrong. When the third party feels, but that don't make sense. Not in this scenario, though.
Okay. Remember we talked about when somebody might be a high net worth customer. That could cause an intimidating situation.
Yeah, and we
Yeah,
might have to
because they
lose the
want to lose
customer.
the
We might have to
customer.
lose them.
Exactly. And so they know they're high net worth and they have a lot of financial relationships with your organization. So then they flex their muscles just because of that. Even if he wasn't abusive, he could have said, "Do you know who I am?" Or take
Yeah,
that
and then
position as if.
Then after that, normally 9 out of 10 times, the management or whoever they deal with offer them something that they shouldn't even be rewarded for.
Exactly.
Just to keep them calm.
He says who he is. Do you know who I am? I would say Sarah.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir.
I have actually seen a case, a situation where the person said, "Yes, I do know who you are," and they repeat the exact same thing that they had said previously. And he got the message.
Because you
Whoever
have
you are.
to follow the policy and the procedure.
Yes, you have to follow the policy and the procedure. You have to follow the policy and the procedure. Anything else in this case? How would you deal with the situation? One, get him escorted out by police.
Yes, ma'am.
The other one is to, despite him saying, "I didn't want to see a manager,"
Yeah, I
actually
get the manager. Yes,
get the manager.
please.
You're not listening to him anymore. You are
No.
taking charge of the situation.
You could refuse to serve further.
Yes.
You could refuse to serve them.
I like option A, police.
We ain't getting on. There's security by us is be sleeping half the time.
Okay. So let's look at the analysis of the decision that's just on the bottom of that page. It says, and one of the key thing here is the scenario is not an ethical dilemma because there is no 2 sides of an issue to be discussed or be decided upon. The customer should be treated with respect, but in turn, the organization has to draw a line between dealing with those who are legitimately angry because the actions or inaction of the organization have made them angry and those who abuse their staff. Nobody employed in the financial sector or any sector is paid or expected to take abuse. The only appropriate response in this instance is to refuse to deal with the customer. And if you are concerned that you do not have the authority to refuse to deal with the customer, your manager should be consulted, who will probably ask him to leave the premises unless he acts reasonable. And in serious cases, the account relationship will be terminated because if this person appears to be very aggressive, even if he leaves the premises today, that could be a behavior that he come in and try to do again. And so sometimes, depending on the situation, it may be a situation where the people say, thank you for your business, we no longer want your business. It doesn't happen as often in the bank, but a lot of times in smaller organizations or other kind of organizations, I know in the insurance company, moral hazard is something that we consider. And if the person is very aggressive at a time of a cordial experience, customer service, they're trying to get some things changed, we anticipate that they would be even more so if there was a claim. And so against that background, we look at, you know what, let's take this opportunity to cancel this policy because we don't want to have a situation when there's a legitimate claim and then the person has already shown that they could be very aggressive and very abusive in an environment. So ethical problems arise when we have to choose between a right and a wrong. And sometimes when there are conflicting outcomes of decision to different people, there's no such problem in this case. There's only this one guy behaving rudely, behaving aggressive, and trying to abuse the person. And I like what they say at the end of this page is the fact that he's a high net worth customer with several account relationship is irrelevant. The fact that he's acting abusively is enough for them to say, okay, we need to get ourselves out of this scenario, and in that vein, actually look to get him out of the bank and or have somebody else deal with him. Okay, next case, or the first case.
So you want to take it?
Not really. You could have noise in my background. Hello?
I hear you.
We got you. Okay.
Thank you.
Health and safety.
Mm-hmm.
Let's identify the facts. We're dealing with facts. One, we got notification from our HR department indicating that we need to be mindful of the Health and Safety Act. Two, upon investigating or just looking around as instructed by HR, we discovered that there were several possible infractions or items that can cause an accident. Following the chain of command, went to the supervisor and reported to such. After a while, nothing was done, went back, was told that nothing else could be done from his end. So the question now is, what should I do? It's clear. I would either one, need to follow through with either an email or go in person to see HR and advise them of the situation and that it hasn't been resolved. So the facts, if you're looking at it from the perspective of, I look at it this way, anytime it mentions a job, it's talking about more than likely some responsibility or duty. And the duty would be to be able to facilitate a safe environment relative to my coworkers and myself. The fray carpet and the wires that are exposed pose a significant hazard. So my responsibility and my duty is to them. And to mix in some, if I'm looking at it from a teleological aspect, is to make sure if I do not fulfill my duty and move forward on this, there could be some industrial accident, thus causing somebody to get hurt.
Wonderful, great. You covered it beautifully. In scenarios like this, that's exactly what I would be expecting. The fact that it's a Health and Safety at Work Act that's involved, that means that it's a criminal law, and employees and employers have a statutory duty. Anytime you hear duty, that's the deontological approach. It's the first one that you could take. The deontological approach is that they have this duty to themselves and to others to prevent damage to their health and safety. Okay, and so, and to be compliant with the law and the duty that the law has put on you, then you could take it as you could accelerate it to the next level yourself. And in terms of from a virtuous perspective, it says most of us would agree that we should care for our own safety and that of others. And so from a duty-based perspective, it is generally accepted that we have a duty to protect ourselves and others from danger. And in this particular case, it was the frayed carpets, the damaged cables from computer equipment, and they pose a fire hazard as well as a trip and fall kind of scenario. And so persons could have been involved. And then you give the immediate manager reasonable time to make the comments, and coming back to say, I've passed it on and there's nothing else more I can do, then that says to you right there and then, you have a duty to escalate yourself, because obviously when they say, I've reported the concern and there's nothing more I can do, it tells you that he or she is not prepared to do anything else. And then from the consequentialist approach, which is the teleological approach, anytime you're talking about consequence or the outcome, you're talking about the teleological viewpoint. If we do not act in a manner that is consistent with the well-being of others, ourselves and others, there is a danger of negative consequences to not only the individuals affected by the hazard, but also the organization as a whole, because of course there might be the repercussion of them being sued, and any customers might be involved. So the main thing is that as you are a party in the first instance, you already sought the action of your manager, and they did not follow up. The person that are affected by this whole act is you, your manager, the human resource department, and any other employees or customers that might be involved. And the duty is to oneself and to others. And so you got it all correct. If you look at the decision as set out at the bottom of page 168, it says there are two possible ways forward. The first is to put the concern in writing and keep a record of this. The communication should make it clear that the concerns are based on your desire to comply with the law and should refer specifically to the earlier communication from the Human Resource Department. Because keep in mind now, in this particular case, the Human Resource Department had a few weeks earlier, write to all staff reminding them of their health and safety at work act. So they have sensitized you to this, up to be aware, on this kind of awareness. And so you can make reference to that in your communication. And the second is to go directly to the Human Resource Department itself with the concern. And this can be done in writing or by seeking a person with appropriate authority so that the matter can be discussed face to face. Again, this should be followed up with a note to thank the person for listening to the concerns and summarizing the matters discussed. And it is definitely wrong to do nothing, because the duty is on you because of the act to act in a safe manner. And the duty was on your manager as well. So it's not to say, but because he said he's not going to do anything, I'm not going to do anything either. I really did my part. No, the fact that you reported it, the duty still exists. And should you see nothing has changed, that duty still exists with you. And so this renders the decision maker in breach of the law, as well as failing to do the right thing from a moral viewpoint. So definitely you'd want to make certain that that is dealt with in that manner, in like manner. Okay. We're going to look at case study 4. That's on page 172. And then case study 5. That's on page 175. So I'm gonna switch it up a little bit between the two groups, but we still have two groups. And group 1, you're gonna be doing the case study 4, and group 2, case study 5. Let's see who we had the last time. Okay. Okay, so in that particular case, that was an important point as well, in that, and case number 4 is that in addition to being trained to psychologically pressure the customers, many of the customers already had the insurance product policies in place to cover them for any risk that was being concerned. So it was double selling, double dipping, and in some cases, trying to sell them or being trained to sell them things that they don't need. And so that was one of another factor as well. So they were used to selling investments alongside with equity release products to elderly homeowners or people who probably don't really understand what they're getting. And most people, when it comes to insurance, and especially if it's attached onto a loan, the only thing they know is I want to get the car, or I want to get the loan, or I want to get the house. Whatever the bank say I need to do is what exactly I will do. And if the bank is the person, the representative of the bank is very skilled, they could walk over there paying a higher mortgage than was necessary just because of all the add-ons that's coming down the line. So the ethical dilemma here is a conflict between the need to sell policies to some customers, and some may or may not need it, but many of them did not need to it. And so the conflict was that there were some who did not need it, and it was a requirement by the customer rather than the fare. If a customer really needed it, you did a need analysis and they really needed it, and you talked to them very carefully, and you actually show empathy for them, and they end up buying it, that was one thing. But if you use the scare tactics to make them go ahead and just add it on without even knowing whether or not they need it, then that was the dilemma. So your duty is to serve the needs of the customer, and this can be done by identifying their needs, like I said before, and then matching alternative solutions to their needs. And this duty implies being truthful and objective, meaning you looking out for the best interest of the customer as opposed to the commissions that you were going to get paid on the product, or just making money for the bank. So a lot of persons know that the more effective sales trainers always stress the importance of empathy and putting the customer first and putting the customer needs ahead of anything. From a consequential viewpoint, those who sell using high pressure techniques will probably only sell once to the customer who will be uncomfortable with their interaction and avoid future dealings with the advisor, and not only avoid future dealings with the representative, but they will not recommend the bank or not recommend that institution because of how they felt. People only recommend people to people who they feel good about and who they feel help them, work with them, had a friendly atmosphere after you look towards what it is that they want. And so some companies will buy products that they do not need, and this is wrong. Now, Kendrick also mentioned the Financial Services and Market Act 20. The minute you see an act, that means that there is some legal obligation to parties. And according to this Financial Services and Market Act 2000, the selling and promotion standards in the source book, it is always arguably also illegal to use such tactics, such scare tactics. So customers should be treated with respect and dignity, and the duty is to advise them accordingly. They should not be threatened or intimidated by any advisors, and should not be made uncomfortable in any way, because then they will not want to do business with them. And they know when you're putting pressure on them, and the high pressure techniques assume that there's no fundamental principle, but there is a fundamental principle when you use high pressure tactics to get people attached to a situation. So the decision is on page 174, and it reads, as the course is still in progress, the trainer should be challenged directly, even if this causes disruption to the program. The trainer should be asked to validate his or her techniques on ethical grounds and justify how they can be seen to be decent and honest. The training function or those responsible for the program should be informed immediately of the concerns. Feedback should also be given to the compliance function. High-pressure sales of life insurance products from the focus of a high-profile documentary in the early 1990s, when sales trainers working in a now-defunct company were secretly videotaped while running live training sessions. The tapes were sent to the television company, which then ran an expose on its practices. The head of the company admitted that their techniques were designed to maximize short-term sales, which in turn maximizes commission income. He also stated that he personally would never buy any of the products offered. So pressure selling is much less common today, but still takes place in some companies. That's what they say. But depending on the market environment, high pressure sales could be what is employed, so that people who focus on their commission as opposed to or the benefit or the products or the profitability of the organization as opposed to what the customer actually needs. And then there are some banks who would give you open a credit card for you, giving you say you want to get a loan from a bank, and you say, okay, I want to borrow $10,000. And the bank then turns around and say, okay, we'll give you $5,000 in cash. And then we'll give, in addition to that, we'll give you a credit card with a $5,000 limit. So the person walks away feeling that they got $10,000, which in effect, they only got $5,000, with a view that they're already paying an interest rate on the $10,000 that they borrowed. But on the credit card, there's a separate and additional interest rate on the credit card. So the first time they swipe that card, they are paying double interest. And in some cases, they say that's illegal. If a person comes in for $10,000 and there's interest already charged on that $10,000, they should get the full $10,000 cash. And that's the end of it, as opposed to forcing them to get a credit card when that was not what their intention was in the first place. And then when they get a credit card and they start swiping or whatever else, and now this money is outstanding on a credit card, you end up causing them to, in addition to the $10,000, what they thought they got, they now have another loan, or they now have a loan at 18% average daily interest rate. So that would definitely be unethical to want to do that, especially if you're looking at the lower income bracket individuals who want to come in for a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 loan, as opposed to someone who really wants to get a mortgage. And so they probably would not qualify for the higher amounts. And so you're putting them on a financial treadmill that the more they spend, the deeper they get in debt. And then they come with, after you've gotten the $5,000 or pay something down, what we could do is clear all of the loan with a credit card again, and then or clear the credit card with another loan, and then it becomes a financial roller coaster that the person is actually on. And banks are very good at that. The other thing that banks are very good at is, say you would have taken out a loan and you've been paying it very well. They send you, we have a pre-approved card for you. Or they end up saying, we got a special interest rate if you want to borrow some more money. So and just before you finish paying off the existing loan is when they start noticing, this was serviced very well. And so we'll call you to invite you to say, man, you're already in our system. We got your number and everything and so forth, and you already qualify for up to another $10,000. So again, you're in that spiral of loan and borrowing, and you wonder why you're not creating any true source of wealth for you and your family because you are just working to pay off the bank in essence. And as good financial advisors, we really should be telling the customers that's not the way to go. Any questions, concerns, comments from the other group in regards to that particular case? Before I move on?
Well, I hope nobody with the Commonwealth Bank after listening to you say that.
And I say you don't call the bank and no company. Oh my Lord, look how you're going to jail. I didn't make my disclaimer. No politics, no religion, no name in the company. But it is a very precarious scenario if you are looking at the duty of care to the customer. And that's the approach that I'm looking at. And if I look at it in the deontological perspective, it would be unethical. So,
Hey, I'm not gonna call nobody name, but just like how they said during this COVID, you get 6 months, you don't have to come and pay. Y'all would do salary reduction, we ain't gonna touch your money. Y'all will pay over the counter or however to go, y'all ain't gotta bring it. Like I tell the co-workers, you think they're gonna lose? Like seriously, if you have the money, go and pay it. Because you're gonna end up paying double at the end of the day.
they don't lose. And the thing about it is, if you look at it, in the majority of loans, the first, well, in mortgages, the first 5 to 10 years, you just paying the interest.
Man, I feel like the first 15, 20 years, you only paying interest.
And so what is a dilemma is after about 5 or 6 years, say you borrowed $190,000, $200,000. After 5 years of paying money, they tell you your bill is still 200,000 and 200 and something. And you're saying, well, hey, in my mind, I would have already paid you back about $15,000. At least I was expecting it to touch the 200,000. But that's the interest. And they take their interest first before they start attaching to the principal.
Yeah, because I know an individual, she say when she went to the bank, say she was paying that mortgage for 10 years. When they tell her she still owe what she borrowed, she tell them keep the house. She say she pack up stuff and come home to her parents. It is call her. She say, put me in court, do whatever you do, because that almost kill her.
Yeah. But if you calculate the money, when they tell you how much your monthly rate would be over the period of time that you assign for the loan, say for instance you borrow $150,000, $160,000, and you take out a 20-year or 15-year, when they tell you your monthly income, your monthly loan payment is $800 to $900. If you multiply that out for the 20 years that you have that mortgage outstanding, you, instead of paying $150,000, $60,000, you would pay more like $215,000. And so, well into the first period of that loan, you could still be over the $150,000 or $160,000 that you borrowed. Yes, absolutely, because they take out their interest first and don't touch the principal until the interest is actually paid off. But most of the time, the individuals are so excited to get into their own home. And so some banks say, you want to throw in some money to get some furniture?
Yeah, that's like when you go.
Sorcery.
That's like when you go looking for a job, right? They say, oh, I could pay you X, Y, Z. You say, oh, okay. You're looking for the job. So you say, okay. Come to find out, you're the lowest one paid because they paying the next person the same thing you're doing twice as much. but you so excited just to get in the door. That's, yeah. So we don't really think about those things. So we didn't settle in and the hide and gone. Say, wow, this,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, and then it's too late after that.
yeah, yeah.
Buyer's remorse.
And to me, my recommendation always to anybody with getting into a contract of employment or a work contract or expectation of fee for services, ask for as much as you want at the beginning of the relationship, because it don't get better the longer you get in. So if you think you're worth $40,000, ask for 45. Okay, let them try to get more, because after you get in, increases are not guaranteed, bonuses are not guaranteed. So you could be on that job for 5 years, making the same money that you thought that you came into the front door with. There's
10
nothing.
years and make the same money.
Anyhow, let's go on to case study number 5. Next, new case study number 5.
All right, the car company.
Mhm.
Okay, so these are some of the facts we came across. Management restructuring exercise. It got upgraded to a divisional management level. You are informed that you're entitled to a new company car. Let me ask this question, not cutting myself off, right? But someone's opinion don't necessarily, I don't consider it a fact. Yes, no? I'm asking.
And you're asking that?
Because I questioned myself when I went further down. And when I was reading it.
This is what I'm trying to prevent you in particular from doing.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked
Hold
now.
on. Listen, like I say, listen before you speak. Before you get to whether you right or wrong, let's first go over the facts. You get in the first paragraph and you don't jump down to the end. You haven't
so you saw it. So you see what I was meaning then. No,
I'm saying one of the things I want you to practice, you and everybody else is to practice, is how to systematically analyze the case. And you short circuit yourself. You jump to a proposed conclusion before you even get 1/3 through what are the facts of this case. Don't let your mind wander to what could be the answer to a question if you haven't analyzed all the facts yet. So I'm deliberately not answering that question because we haven't gotten to that step yet. We're still on step number 1, which is analyzing all of the facts of the entire case first.
Okay. So you choose a environmentally friendly vehicle.
Those are the facts.
That's what you. Tara, take it over. Me block.
Okay. The new policy means that you can choose a car after a specific market price. You decide to choose a vehicle that is environmentally friendly. You are dismayed by the reaction of your manager.
Mm-hmm.
He is a car enthusiast who has a high performance vehicle. Under no uncertain terms, you should choose. In no uncertain terms, you should choose another model.
So who is saying you should not, under no circumstances, choose another model?
The manager.
The manager.
You. since
Mhm.
we have this kind of vehicle, you should not, you shouldn't do it.
Right.
Okay.
Another fact would be if the executives see how much money they save from your car, they will have us all driving these things. And he
Is
also
that
said,
is that a fact or is that what's been said?
You see,
that's it.
that's like, that's why I asked the question. Is someone's opinion you could consider factual? Because your opinion, like you say, could be right or wrong, could go left or right.
But then again,
The fact is, the manager gave you his opinion as to why you should not choose the car that you chose. So all of those things are a part of his opinion. And the fact is, he gave his opinion. It's not a fact that
Okay.
all the other executives will have a problem with it because all the executives are not involved.
but it's a fact because he gave his opinion.
It's a fact that he gave his opinion, saying they might be, that they will be. So the fact is, he gave his opinion.
Okay. Okay.
And all that would have said is the manager's opinion.
Oh, so we should put that first then, eh?
I'm not necessarily first. What came first is you were, if I were to look at this particular case, what came first was you were promoted. to a
Right.
manager. And then you found out that as part of your promotion, you were entitled to a car and they gave you a particular price that you need to stay within.
Right.
And then after you took that in consideration, and you took in consideration that you wanted something environmentally friendly because of what you want to do, your concept to you have a conscience to the environment, and that you take holidays, trips in your vehicle, which you have to buy the gas when you go on holiday. And so you took those things into consideration when you chose your car. And you didn't want this car to put any pressure on your budget when you take your holidays with your family. And so you chose that car. Now, your manager says to you, comes to you and have a problem with the car that you chose because he is a car high performance vehicle enthusiast. And he is saying to you, he's giving you his opinion that your choice is going to affect everybody else. Okay, so the manager responsible for the fleet wants to know what type of vehicle you have chosen and what should you decide. So all of the facts was before there was a decision. You inform your manager of what your intention was, and now he's saying, don't do it. And then he's asking you, what have you decided? What should you decide? That's the question.
I should decide whatever car I felt suitable and comfortable with if I into environmentally friendly and economical cars, whether they paying me gas or not. He is very conscientious about the cost effect of him going to Europe for his vacation. So he should choose the car that he prefers or the car that he wants. Whatever happens, then you never said, or you never gave me a choice of a car to choose from. You told me that up to a specific market price. So if I wanted the Tesla and you driving the Bugatti, I should be able to drive my Tesla because that's what I want to purchase.
It should be the other way around. In essence, let's say everybody is driving a Mercedes, and you decided you want a Kia Sportage.
It ain't gonna make it on them trips to Europe, Miss Fraser. That
Or,
Kia,
or you decide you want a Nissan Sylvie.
As long as they don't want it to die.
Let's analyze the case. It's on the bottom of 175.
Yes, well, I see here where, well,
The
he could
dilemma.
have used, yeah, he could have used it as, like you say, we have to now start putting in, either if it's our duty, we could use that as a part of the conclusion. Yeah.
Yes.
Could also, you said we could use Telios, consequences of our action. Now,
Mhm.
we know where they can go left or right, because now we're dealing with upper management. We'll say either you do what I say and fall in line, or you look like you can cause friction.
Right. And you could also look at it in the consequences of if you are responsible for your own petrol, what would be the consequences of you getting a high performance car where when you go on vacation, you have to buy more gas for those high performance cars than you would have for an economical car. So the
Right.
actual consequence to you is more money out of your pocket or your family holiday budget.
But shouldn't management themselves be looking for the best interest of the company and not your image?
The managers have a fiduciary responsibility to look out for the best interest of the company. And in most cases, what is in the best interest of the company is what is most economically feasible for the company. But let's turn this into another scenario. What if we are in the business of selling we are selling high net worth clients on high net worth real estate. And one of the ways of selling our high net worth real estate is that we should collect them from the airport and wine and dine them so they could see the beauty of these high net worth properties that we want to sell for 2 million plus. And a part of the image of the organization is that we have the Teslas or the electrical vehicles or the Mercedes that we pick them up in, and you show up in your Nissan Note.
No, you'd have to drive the company car. You have to park your car, but you have to pick up the people in the company car.
Okay, so in that scenario, the organization's reputational risk and also the performance of the target market that you would be doing the company a disservice if your focus was a low income vehicle that is more practical than a high luxury car. If you're picking up a high net worth customer to show them off the condos or the properties. So I'm just saying that's why it's important to analyze the facts, because depending on what the facts are, it could change the situation of what you should do in an ethical environment, in an environment where you are looking out for the company's best interest. There are some organizations who give you uniform allowance or clothes allowance because they want you to look a certain part in engaging with their customers. And so if you make a decision not to dress appropriately, you could actually be impacting the sales or the profits of that organization because people would not be interested in purchasing from you. So I'm only saying, when we look at it and let's go through the analysis as they give it to us. The dilemma challenges your duty to do what your manager says for the wrong reason. It's your duty to do what you think is right. Kohlberg's concept throws some interesting light on this dilemma. His pre-conventional reasoning would be that on the basic plane, you would want the approval of your manager and would do what he wants you to do. The conventional stage would reason the decision from a perspective of expectation of others. At the highest point, conventional plane, you would consider your duty to the organization and the environment. Looking at this from the deontological viewpoint, your broader duty is to the organization and to the environment. It is your choice. If your choice then triggers a change in policy that means others must follow, then the only casualty is the image and vanity of your manager. And so you would make your decision. From the teleological viewpoint, your choice of vehicle would have more positive consequences than negative ones. Though one could argue that if performance cars are important to existing managers, they may choose to leave the company if forced to drive different models. So it goes back to, will your decision make it necessary for others to change the way that they were going? It may or may not be. It might be just this specific manager's choice. And when the same manager might have approached other managers, they kind of say, okay, fine, we'll go along with you. But they had the choice also too to not go along with the crowd, to be different and take their own personal preferences in place. So the question comes down to, should you choose the more environmentally friendly car and upset your manager or not? And on page 176, it says, you should choose the vehicle based on your own evaluation of what is best. Your manager's view should not influence this. Bottom line. Okay, let's try one more time. Let's try this scenario just one more time. I'm wanting to case study number 1 on page 177 and case study number 8 on page 180. Okay, those are the 2 cases being considered now. And keep in mind, always, always, always analyze the case facts first, and then answer your question after you've analyzed, or at least paid much attention to the case itself. Okay, so we're going to do another breakout and case study 6, group 1, case study 8, group 2. Okay. I need Kendrick to join. Breakout room 1, please. Okay, we're back. And we're going to start with case number 2 this time. Case study number 8.
Okay, our topic is debt counselor. So the facts is you're a self-employed debt counselor for Mutual Financial Services Organization. You are to visit individuals and families that experience financial difficulties to agree repayment plans that will bring their accounts back in order. Your organization promotes an image of being member-oriented and more focused on the needs of customers than proprietary organizations. But it has been suggested that the company is adopting a more aggressive approach to customers who are in default situation. And a repayment plan that you have agreed with the customer, it was told that it was too soft as a result of the rejection of the plan and the increased pressure for the customer to bring the account back in order. They had a nervous breakdown. You are unhappy with the policy of the organization, but because you're a self-employed individual with family commitments of your own, you are conscious that the work from this company comprises 25% of your income. So what should you do? This is a situation where you're between a rock and a hard place, because you're supposed to help those customers who have financial difficulties to resolve or assist them with their financial obligations. What the individual did, even though they tried to come up with a plan to help the customer, before they had done that and gotten the customer consent or made the customer feel as though it was feasible, they should have gone and to hire management and go through it to see whether or not it would have been accepted. Because here it is now with that customer or that client having a nervous breakdown because of the pressure. It makes you feel empathetic. Well, I mean, I would have felt empathetic of the situation and feel a little down with the fact that I went and I stepped forward trying to assist, and it caused more of an explosion than it did a settling of the situation. And that customer depended on me and my honesty to actually bring forth what I had actually proposed to them. So I just think it was a big blow up.
What should you do?
You can cry, first of all.
Cry, you gotta execute that job.
You could go and pray and cry, pray for forgiveness and cry, right?
Because it's gonna, that's like, word of mouth, they could come and say, man, tear God, it caused that customer to have a nervous breakdown. Don't let her in your house. You have to take a feel of some type of way. This a whole heap to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a heavy, heavy situation. And it's a real life crisis for me to know what we have been going through for the past 2 years. And just to know a client had a nervous breakdown because you couldn't resolve something that you were supposed to be able to help them with. I don't know.
Let's talk to another debt collector and see what's his take.
Go ahead, Kendrick.
Okay. Be recording, right?
The fact of the case.
Okay, from what I remember reading this, this particular case, let me spin there, let me go there. As a collective, anybody ever told you that a collecting job is easy? They're lying to you.
Okay.
The debt collectors, his responsibility was to be a mediator between the financial institution and the client itself. He was supposed to mediate what would generally, I think, what's supposed to happen. I think this is a recovery effort. This isn't really an active accounts type of thing. But anyway, you are then to mediate. His job was to mediate and to find the middle ground where the company could feel accepted and where the client is able to comfortably repair their credit.
Yes.
What you have to do in this scenario, if there's a discrepancy on either side, what you should do is that advise the institution, if they're not satisfied, then they have another medium, which is through the legal system where they can get their monies back. I do believe in certain instances, and I know I ain't saying no facts or nothing like that, but I do believe in the situation that we find ourselves in today, Tira. There are some who are drastically hurting, and that's never easy as a collection officer to take somebody before the court. It's never easy to do that because certain people are hurting, but here's the thing, I have a fiduciary responsibility as an officer to, because of the way that we are formulated, we possess, okay, how many of us in here? 5. Let's say 2 people are delinquent. At the end of the year, I'm inhibiting Ms. Frazier, myself, and Tira from maximizing their investment in the institution in regards to their interest, their investment. Tamiko and Anita, they may be dealing with financial issues and they are in default. There's several ways in which we could do it. Before we even get to the court system, you can do a forbearance with these individuals, whereby you do 6 months of payments that you can actually apply directly to the principal, put a freeze on the interest, put a freeze on the late fee, freeze everything in that particular position, and then go from there, give them a 6-month reprieve based upon how far the delinquency has gone. Once that is established, then in 6 months, based upon the person's age, you can move forward from that point, restructure the loan, and start the loan over from day one, giving that person the opportunity to recover their credit viability. Not only that, putting them back into a position like how Criff is getting ready to come on board, the credit bureau.
Yeah.
That opportunity to repair their credit, I don't know how we're going to deal with that, if they're going to use Clayton's law in regards to restructuring, where the institutions have to open up a brand new account, and I'm just all over the place right now. But if you are completely uncomfortable, and I think one of the case studies mentions it, if you are in a scenario where you are uncomfortable dealing with a scenario, the company telling you, listen, I want my full $500 a month, but the person only could afford $300 at this present time, and they're telling you that's too soft, I want more, then you have to make a decision as an independent contractor or consultant, whichever term. You have to move if it's unsettling to you, because there are some times you have to bite your tongue in certain situations. There are times.
Okay.
It's never easy, especially now.
Yeah. Well, I let me now apologize for putting you on the spot, but I want to hear from your perspective, because in some cases, an organization could take the position that we rather get $300 than nothing at all. And there's always a cost to having to sell this property and rewrite this loan with somebody else. And you don't know that the person that you're moving to is not in financial scenario as well, especially if it's a situation that has affected a lot of individuals. Like in the pandemic, even those who had money were holding on to it. So they weren't going to just rush over. I mean, some organization have distressed properties, pages and pages and pages, and no one is coming forward to buy them. So rather than putting a family out and getting nothing and holding this in inventory, if the customer is prepared to pay $300 a month instead of the $500, some companies, like you said, would take the position, especially a company who's calling itself as being member orientated. So the organization promotes an image of being a member orientated. This sounds like a mutual fund kind of scenario, or like how the teachers in Delby, where the members themselves are the ones getting loans, because they were not necessarily called
Clients or customers, they call members.
mortgagees, member orientated. So that suggests that these people have a vested interest in the company as well, because they're members as opposed to mortgagees or
Right.
creditors or something of that nature. And that was something that I saw. You being a self-employed individual, keep in mind that this company is responsible for 25%. So 75% is somewhere else. Can you walk away from these people and try to put more emphasis in the 75%, which makes a 75% 100 or 90 or whatever, if you are uncomfortable? Because if you are a self-employed counselor, they should have given you certain parameters to begin with. And once you work within the parameters that they've given you, then you will feel badly if they come back to you and reject the plan that you've already agreed with the customer. Because once you act within your authority, they cannot disagree with your plan. You can stick to your gun and say, I'm not going back to the customer to ask to put any more pressure on the person. And you do what you got to do, because I worked within the parameters that you gave me. Let's see how they analyze it. It says, and it agrees with Tira in that you are in an impossible position. Your role is to help borrowers resolve problems with their finances. Their proposal to deal with this problem, with their problems, are rejected by your client who hired you as an independent. In formulating the recovery plan, you are given false hope to the borrower, but now know that what you are agreeing with the borrower has a possibility of being rejected by the lender. To continue to work on the same basis is questionable from any ethical viewpoint. The virtuous based approach would suggest that you must obtain the trust of those you advise, which you cannot truthfully do at the moment. You have a duty to be honest and open with the borrower, but you cannot give a commitment that your recommendation will be backed. The consequences of the current approach are already known. Some of those who regard you as a possible escape route from their problems are dismayed to learn that the interview has been a waste of their time. The decision, the only way that you can continue to provide service effectively is to know exactly what the lender will and will not accept. This means going back to the arrears recovery function and ascertaining its precise objectives and tolerances. You cannot conduct interviews with borrowers and propose solutions that you know may be challenged or even worse, prove unacceptable to your client. So it's saying that you should make sure you get the parameters. And once you work within that parameters, then you have a leg to stand on to say, I'm not going back to the customer. This is what we decide, and you got to live with it. Because at that point, you are an agent of your client, and you work with the authority that was given to you. An additional dimension to this decision is the high proportion of total income received from the client company. Therefore, it may not be financially viable for the individual to give up the business. If this is the case, it is necessary to ensure that when advice is given to those experiencing financial difficulties, it should be accompanied by an explanation that any plan developed is a recommendation and not a guaranteed course of action that would be unconditionally accepted by the lender. So what they're saying is you should make your disclaimer and say, well, okay, that sounds like a workable plan, but let me take it back to them and see what I come back with. So you're not leaving the customer with, okay, this is what we're going to do. Fair enough? Okay.
Yes.
K6, group 1. Let's hear ye, group 1.
D'Amico?
All right. Okay. Okay. So these are the facts.
I hope you guys are getting a hang of how to analyze cases, because this is the practical application of all that we would have learned in chapters 1 through 5.
Okay. So the fact says you're a business account manager for the bank, right? You have a policy in place that refuses business with any country or organization. Well, any country or organization that damages the environment, offends human dignity, compromise civil rights, or engage in any form of cruelty to humans and or animals. Right? This is the value are incorporated in our business statement. You were approached by the Secretary of Local Society that promotes protection for welfare of pirates. The society wants to open up a bank account with the organization. The society is supported by locally over 200 members. The concern comes in places that the pirates are used for killing rabbits, and that goes against our statement or mission where we protect cruelty for animals or humans. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Should you accept or reject the application to open the account for the society?
Based upon the mission statement, absolutely, definitely won't be engaging in business in them. Based upon the virtue, I would look at virtue. I can look at 3 of the aspects or try to look at it, but I'll start with the end result. I'll just do teleological. Because this is in my mission statement and everybody's aware of what it is in my mission statement. For me to do business with a society that basically has a love affair with ferrets, it contradicts everything about my business. And what that can be perceived as is having, again, reputational risk, because people are going to start looking at you sideways. Because you're saying one thing in your statement, but you are exhibiting something completely different through your actions. So just that alone, just from the teleological aspect, that in itself definitely won't be opening the account. Won't be establishing relations with that particular entity.
Anything else? Okay. If you're interested in what ferrets are, they're like fox-like animals that they actually use to chase and capture rabbits. So let's look at how they analyze it. The bank refused the business and was subject to the widespread publicity, including a feature on a primetime regional news documentary program. So this was a case based on a real controversy. The bank here had decided the bank here has decided that it will accept or decline business according to stated principles. The reference to cruelty to animals is explicit, and the fact that some ferrets are used to kill rabbits is irrefutable. From the virtuous angle, we are all expected to do what we say we will do unless the local society can guarantee that none of the creatures will be used to kill other animals. The only right decision can be to decline the business. The duty-based approach reinforces this, as the bank has a duty to act consistently and in a manner that accurately reflects its values. And looking at consequences, the refusal to do business with a small local club may expose the bank to the loss of some business, and perhaps a little ridicule from those who do not see a major ethical issue here. However, by granting the banking facility, the bank is vulnerable to criticism that it does not take its own values seriously. So animal rights are a serious issue in the UK, and this is a UK-based case. Note that the consequentialist argument may be divided on this dilemma. For example, many farmers regard rabbits as crucial, ferocious creatures that decimate crops, so their numbers must be contained at all costs. So the consequences, if you look at from a farmer's perspective, it is, we want to get rid of these rabbits. Animal lovers would see this as no reason for tearing rabbits apart from limb to limb to die a slow, agonizing death. The latter would not differentiate between the legal killing of rabbits with ferrets and the non-legal equal barbaric killing of foxes with hounds. So the decision was the bank should adopt an approach that is consistent with its stated policies and decline the business. And that's what you guys agreed that should happen. Okay. So I'm sorry for those guys that missed this particular class, because this is the crux of how to analyze case, how to put it together, and how to systematically look through and not get emotionally attached. The emotion should come at the very end when you are preparing your conclusions, as opposed to jumping to a conclusion before you analyze all the facts. Systematic, objective analysis is what we're trying to aim at. So let's look at our last scenario, which is case study 9 and 10. Case study 9 and 10. And we break out for about just 15 minutes, and then we come back together and wrap up. Group 1, you're doing 9. And group 2, you're doing case 10. We're going to start with, we did it backwards the last time, we're going to do it the right way this time, where we're going to start with case number 9, group 1.
Kira, you want to take it?
Okay, I can start. So our facts for the accountant's dilemma is that you're a financial accountant for your organization and have submitted the draft accounts for the year. The information included in the most recent report suggests that 2 major accounts of borrowing clients are likely to impact adversely on the company's performance. You raised the concern with the financial director, who asked you to keep quiet about the issue because he is concerned about that the matter will come to the attention of the auditors, who may then consider the accounts not to represent a true and fair view of the company's financial position. So comment on the potential conflict between your duty as a professional accountant and duty as employee of the company. Now, as with any organization, you have to follow code of ethics and code of conduct. So our decision is that we should act in an ethical way, because we could have a potential of being, it's not this bad, Kendrick, what you said the word was? Of losing our license for not actually acting with honesty and integrity. So you could actually go before the courts for failure to not disclose the information that you came upon when you were doing your analysis.
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Tira was talking about, the aspect of there being a governing bodies for accountants that you are accountable to, that can inhibit your ability to actually earn a living. And should you have gone forth in not disclosing the information, there is an aspect of because I was using the example of MCI WorldCom, where the accountant actually was smudging the numbers to represent something that it wasn't, to the effect of wanting to keep shareholders happy, much less like this financial director, and wanting to keep stock options up. The duty of the accountant is, first of all, because it's a deontological aspect, is to make sure that he upholds his oath that he took as an accountant. He has a duty to that body. He has, secondarily, has a duty to his shareholders and stakeholders in the company. Then the duty to the company itself, because if he chooses not to follow through on that oath that he took, his ability to earn a living can be affected. And if he chooses not to go along, if he chooses to go along with the financial director, it could inhibit his ability and his freedom, because he could go to court and be sanctioned and could be convicted of fraud.
Gotcha. Absolutely. All of the above. How they say it in the book is there's a clear conflict of interest between the duties of the professional accountant and the duties of the employee. Qualified accountants are members of a professional body, and the environment is BICA. And all such bodies, or should be members of BICA. Not all accountants are members of BICA for some strange reason. Qualified accountants are members of a professional body, and all such bodies have codes of ethics or codes of conduct that lay down fundamental principles to which all members must adhere. At the same time, the accountant in this situation is expected to give faithful service to his employer. The common law situation offers some compromise for this conflict in that it states that employees should be prepared to obey reasonable instructions given by employers. Is it reasonable to expect a professional accountant to disregard the principles imposed by the professional body? The duties are clear in this situation, but there's no middle path for the accountant, who will either have to do what the employer expects or comply with the explicit principles laid down by the professional body. The consequentialist view offers a greater insight. If the accountant fails to disclose material facts and the organization is found to be non-compliant with reporting standards, not only the organization, but also the accountant will be exposed. If this is the case, the accountant may never be able to practice again. So the ethical person will inform his or her manager of the duties expected of a professional accountant and act according to his conscience. The risk of incurring the wrath of senior management is disproportionate to the potential consequences of inappropriate action, or more correctly, inaction. And like I said, it could be at a place where he can never be able to practice again. So it isn't disbarred, but it's barred from practicing accounting. And I know of an accountant who would have misappropriated his clients' funds. He cooked the books, as it were, and then he was off with the money, with some monies. He was charged and convicted, and as a result, he couldn't hold himself out to be an accountant in the country. And it's been a while. It wasn't you have it for 10 years or 15 years. He could not, I mean, if someone uses him privately, that's one conversation, that's another conversation, but he couldn't sign off of any books and he could not hold himself up publicly as an accountant. And that's been many, many, many years. So the question really is the consequences of possibly getting the wrath of that financial director, or the consequences of you losing your license and your ability to earn for your family over the long haul. The two is not, the scales are not really balanced in that regard. And so the proper thing to do was to say that you will not misrepresent or withhold from representing any information that comes to your attention when you're doing your due diligence. And you guys acing these analyzing cases. Okay, case number 10. Let's hear ye. No, that's the wrong one. Like, she was just waiting for that mic to get open.
Okay, so this one here.
Oh, okay.
You want to go? You could go, babes.
No, go, sweetheart.
All right then. So problems. The facts that are stated here is a work in a sub office of a small financial institute. Only full-time staff is me and another colleague, you and another colleague. Manager responsible for 3 sub offices and visits the office 2 or 3 times out of the week to deal with customers' interviews and administration. Okay. You and your colleague deal with routine customers interview. Colleague is a good friend for many years. She's been under a lot of stress, dealing with stress recently. She's been acting erratically, being rude to the customers, having bad temper, coming to work smelling like alcohol. First thing in the morning. So after reading all of this, I felt as though it's not just my duty to her as a friend, but also my duty to the company. I tell her first that she needs to shape up, because at the end of the day, it's gonna affect her in the long run, which will be the teleos effect, which will be the consequences of her action if she don't get it together. So once I didn't want to first and tell her, you gotta put your personal differences aside and you gotta come to work and do whatever. Now, if I see I didn't tell her that 2-3 more times or another time she comes, then I will bring it to management attention and let them know I already told her. So she's being forewarned. So I don't know what else.
It don't have to be more than that if you didn't come up with anything else.
From what I read here, is you got your duty. Yes. There's going to be consequences of your action. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Let me look. So what else I missed out?
Well, you could decide, because she's your friend, pretend that there's not a scenario, and your duty to your friend is greater than your duty to the organization and other employees.
But even if you see, I don't, as a friend, say something to her, or don't say after the fact, say something to management, a customer's going to report her. Someone else will report her.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What they threw in here to kind of throw you off is that you're a good friend for many, many years. And yes, familiarity, exactly. There you go. And then other thing too is you are almost an advocate because you knowing her for many years, her marriage is broken up, and so you might know some of the scenarios around the marriage breaking up and feel sorry for the fact that the marriage broke up. Okay, so now you're an advocate for this woman who has lost a husband. Okay, and so personal problems kind of suggest that you are losing your objectivity. And so anytime you see personal facts in a case, one of the things they want you to do is to be more objective than subjective. And subjective is when you see personal problems, it kind of is used to throw you off. So absolutely. In analyzing this case, it ones that proves extremely difficult for persons involved, especially when there's a personal friendship at stake. The alternative course of actions are do nothing, try to discuss the problem with the colleague, report the matter to the manager formally, and if the manager is approachable, discuss the matter informally and let the manager choose an appropriate course of action. So those are the 4 alternatives that you can do. From the virtues perspective, friendship and camaraderie are paramount, but so too is loyalty and acting in the best interest of the employer. The first implies keeping quiet and hoping that the situation will resolve itself. But the second suggests that the problem be reported without delay. The duty to the organization appears to conflict with the duty to your colleague, but this may not be the case. By attempting to resolve your colleague's problem, this also serves the best interest of the organization. And from the viewpoint of the consequentialist, which of course we know is the teleological approach, by doing nothing, your colleague will almost certainly lose her job. Sooner or later, a customer will make a complaint or your colleague will self-destruct. So the decision is, clearly it is necessary to act in this situation. If the friendship goes back many years, it may be possible to talk to the colleague on a confidential basis. She may need professional help, and you are doing a disservice if the problem is ignored. Your intervention may be the stimulus necessary to provoke action at the risk, of course, of compromising a friendship. If the issue is not addressed, it will be necessary to take the matter further through more formal channels. I think you guys did very, very well in analyzing the case. The only caveat, the only caution I would give you is to don't jump to the conclusion from an emotional perspective, having not first systematically and objectively going through the facts and listing or highlighting those facts. That is a basis of your decision. Okay, so that completes chapter 6. And really, it is chapters 1 through 5 that you're really studying, because chapter 6 is only putting the information, the theory that you would have already read and discussed into practice. And so really finishing off your case study and actually studying for the midterm, which would be on the 10th, is what you should spend the next, because you don't need to read anything for next week. And in the class itself, we would just be discussing some of the case studies that you guys have actually submitted. And so that is a free, except for it's a good time to put the finishing touches of on your case studies and to begin your review for the midterm. But you'll be tested on everything. It could come from anywhere in the book between chapters 1 through 5. Any questions as relates to case study or midterm exam?
What time is the midterm, Ms. Frazier?
The midterm should be the same time the class is expected, unless we can make alternative arrangements.
What's the alternative?
Pardon?
What's another option? What's an alternative?
One person had asked for me to look into, can they take it earlier than the 6 to 9 time frame? So I'm going to check into that. It could not be a day before the Thursday, but it could very well be after.
Would a Saturday work?
I could find that out as well.
Please, because work sometimes unpredictable.
And since we have so few of you, spacing should not be an issue.
Okay.
So
And you,
we could have the proper protocols in place that we could do it. So let me check that tomorrow. So by the end of the week, I could definitely let you guys know.
and then you're supposed to discuss the book with the rest.
Yes.
You did with me and Kendrick.
Okay. Yes. If you got now the second book, it is not the entire book that we'll be going through, because some of the chapters are not appropriate or not necessarily attached to ethics and the dilemmas related to ethics. What the other chapters might be on is regulations and risk management and something like that, which is for another course primarily. And looking at it, I didn't want to get into risk management or the actual legal ramification, and for you to be able to have to go through a lot of case studies and things like that from a legal perspective. I prefer to keep it to the place where it is